Disclaimer: it's inspired by reality, shaped by imagination.
What happens when Michelle Williams, the Oscar-winning actress known for her quiet strength and sharp intelligence, sits across from Joy Behar, the outspoken co-host of The View, on Andy Cohen's late-night playground, Watch What Happens Live? The topic? Something deceptively simple but guaranteed to strike nerves. Is it more valuable to embrace the traditional role of a housewife or to prioritize being a so-called practical woman in today's world? What began as playful banter quickly turned into one of the most charged exchanges in the show's history. Michelle, soft-spoken but razor-sharp, surprised everyone by defending the dignity and complexity of women who choose homemaking. Joy, never one to mince words, pounced with her trademark bluntness, insisting that in the modern era, practicality should always trump tradition. The studio audience gasped, laughed, and clapped as Andy Cohen tried, often unsuccessfully, to keep the peace. Drinks were sipped, side eyes were exchanged, and what should have been a light-hearted late-night segment turned into a fiery, emotional clash that blurred the lines between personal choice and social expectation. And in the end, Michelle Williams delivered a response so fierce, so unexpected, that the audience was left stunned, and Joy Behar, for once, without a comeback. This wasn't just late-night TV. It was a cultural lightning strike. Housewife versus practical woman. Respect versus dismissal. Tradition versus progress. The lights of Watch What Happens Live flickered across the glossy studio as Andy Cohen leaned forward with that mischievous grin that told everyone, audience and guests alike, that he was about to stir the pot. On one side of him sat Michelle Williams, poised, elegant, her calm confidence radiating through the set. On the other side, Joy Behar, who already looked like she was waiting for her chance to pounce. "All right, ladies," Andy began, his voice dripping with amusement. "We've got a hot one tonight. I want to know, are you more of a housewife or a practical woman? And don't sugarcoat it, because you know our audience loves honesty." Michelle chuckled softly, tilting her head. "Well, Andy, I've never been much for labels. I'd say I'm practical. Life has tested me enough times to know that glitter fades, but grit sticks." Her words landed with quiet strength, the audience nodding appreciatively. Joy, however, wasted no time jumping in. "Practical? Please, everyone loves to say that until they're sipping champagne in their fancy kitchen or picking out expensive rugs. Come on, Michelle. Women like us, we all lean into the housewife role, whether we admit it or not." Andy's grin widened as he leaned back in his chair. He could already sense the tension crackling like static in the air. "Joy, are you saying Michelle's not being straight with us?" Joy smirked, her eyes glinting. "I'm just saying, Hollywood women love to act above it all, but let's be real. Everyone wants comfort, security, a little luxury. The practical woman thing, that's just a rebranding for the same old housewife model." Michelle's lips parted slightly, her expression still calm, but her voice gaining a sharper edge. "With respect, Joy, I don't think you get to define other women's choices. Being practical doesn't mean I don't enjoy nice things. It means I don't depend on them. There's a difference." The audience murmured, some clapping, others chuckling nervously. Andy's eyes danced between them like a referee watching two boxers circle each other in the first round. Joy leaned forward, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Oh, so you're above dependence. Tell me, Michelle, when's the last time you vacuumed your own floor, or fixed a leaky faucet, or, let's be honest, cooked a meal without a team of assistants making sure the ingredients were prepped for you?" The jab hit hard, drawing gasps and a few laughs from the crowd. Michelle didn't flinch. She took a breath, straightened her shoulders, and replied evenly, "I cook for my children all the time. And as for vacuuming, Joy, maybe you think reducing women to chores is clever, but it's not. It's outdated." The audience erupted in applause, with a few cheers rising above the noise. Joy's smirk faltered for just a second, but she recovered quickly, raising an eyebrow as if daring Michelle to keep going. Andy clapped his hands together, delighted. Well, 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 looks like we've got ourselves a showdown tonight. Joy, Michelle, I think we just scratched the surface. Don't hold back now. The tension hung in the air, charged, alive, as if everyone in the room knew they were about to witness something unforgettable. What began as playful banter was already turning into a cultural standoff, and it was clear neither woman intended to step back.
The applause finally settled, but the energy in the studio only grew sharper. Andy Cohen leaned into the moment, eyes sparkling. Okay, we've definitely struck a nerve. Let's lean into this a little more. Joy, you think the practical woman label is just a disguise. Michelle, you're saying it's a way of life. Who's right? Michelle sat with her hands folded gracefully in her lap, her tone steady but edged with steel. Here's the truth, Andy. Women have fought for decades to move beyond being defined by whether they keep a house or not. Practicality isn't glamorous, it's survival. It's paying your own bills, making choices for yourself, raising your kids without needing someone else to hold the safety net. That's practical, and it's powerful. The audience burst into applause, clapping and nodding like they'd just been handed gospel. Michelle's quiet authority filled the space. But Joy, never one to let the spotlight drift too far away, leaned forward, her voice cutting. Survival is one thing, Michelle, but let's not pretend that luxury isn't a part of your world, too. You say survival, but the reality is, Hollywood stars like you don't live the same life as the average woman. The single mom working 2 jobs doesn't get to wax poetic about being practical. She just does it because she has no choice. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Andy's eyebrows shot up as he quickly turned to Michelle. Oh, Joy coming in hard there. Michelle, how do you respond to that? Michelle's jaw tightened slightly. You're right, Joy. I don't live the same life as a single mom working 2 jobs, but I've seen women who do. I was raised by women who did. And to suggest that my life disqualifies me from understanding or speaking about practicality, it's insulting. Being in Hollywood doesn't erase my humanity, my experiences, or my ability to respect the struggle of other women. The audience erupted again, this time with louder applause. A chant of, "Go Michelle!" even briefly started in the back rows before fading into nervous laughter. Joy wasn't impressed. She scoffed and shook her head, her tone dripping with mock sweetness. So what you're saying is Hollywood Michelle Williams is going to be the spokesperson for working-class women now. How very noble. The audience booed at the jab. Andy leaned forward, sensing things boiling over. Joy, that felt a little sharp. Michelle's making a point about relatability, not replacing voices. Michelle didn't wait for Andy to referee. Her tone sharpened as she locked eyes with Joy. No, Joy, I'm not saying I speak for them. I'm saying I speak with them, because I listen, something I'm not sure you're doing right now. That line hit like a thunderclap. The audience roared, clapping and cheering. Even Andy let out a low whistle, grinning at the spectacle unfolding before him. Joy's face flushed. She raised her hands in mock surrender. Oh, so now I don't listen. Please, Michelle, I've made a career out of listening to people and challenging their answers. That's what I do. Michelle leaned in slightly, her voice lower, firmer. There's a difference between challenging and dismissing. Right now, you're dismissing women who identify with practicality because it doesn't fit your narrative of what a real woman looks like. That's not listening. That's lecturing. The crowd was on its feet now, clapping so loudly that Andy had to wave his arms to settle them down. Whoa, 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 let's keep the fire but not burn down the house, ladies. Joy, clearly rattled, tried to pivot. Look, here's my point. The whole practical woman thing is cute, but it's just another way of saying you're not a traditional housewife. Fine, but don't act like it's this revolutionary idea. Women have been balancing work, family, and survival since forever. Why rebrand it like it's new? Michelle took a long breath before answering, her words deliberate. It's not about rebranding, Joy. It's about recognizing that women's choices evolve. A practical woman can be single, married, wealthy, or struggling. She's someone who adapts, who doesn't let herself be boxed in by stereotypes. That's not cute. That's strength. And if you don't see that, then maybe it's because you're too busy trying to score points instead of understanding the conversation. The entire studio erupted again, this time with a standing ovation. Andy threw his hands up, half laughing, half stunned. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why we do live television. The energy is electric in here tonight. Joy crossed her arms, lips pursed tight, while Michelle leaned back in her chair, her composure intact, but her eyes blazing with the fire of someone who had just landed a direct hit.
The debate wasn't cooling. It was only climbing higher, hotter, and more personal. The audience was still buzzing from Michelle's last line, some clapping, some shaking their heads. The studio filled with that electric tension you only get when a conversation has turned into something more than television. Andy leaned in, clearly reveling in the energy. Okay, we are way past surface level talk here. Michelle, Joy, this feels personal now. Michelle didn't hesitate. It is personal, Andy, because every time women get together to talk about identity, it turns into this divide. Who's the real woman? Who's the traditional one? Who's the modern one? That's not progress. That's division. And Joy, you feed it. The crowd gasped, almost in unison. Joy's eyes widened, her jaw tightening. Excuse me? I feed it? Please, Michelle. I challenge stereotypes. I poke at the contradictions. That's what makes for real conversation. Michelle's voice grew sharper. No, Michelle, what you do is tear women down under the guise of asking hard questions. You pit us against each other like we're on trial for how we live our lives. That doesn't empower anyone. It just reinforces the same judgment we've been trying to escape for generations. The audience burst into applause, women in the front row standing the clap. Joy's face flushed crimson. She leaned toward Michelle, her tone icy. Don't you dare lecture me on empowering women. I've been standing up to sexism and hypocrisy on national television since before you even had your first starring role. You sit there with your Hollywood privilege and tell me I'm the problem? Please. The jab hit hard, and Andy winced. Ouch. Michelle, your response? Michelle's hand shot down on the table with a sharp smack, silencing the murmurs instantly. Her eyes locked on Joy, unwavering. Privilege doesn't erase truth. Just because I have a platform doesn't mean my words don't carry weight. You think you're the gatekeeper of feminism, Joy? That no one else gets to define what strength or practicality looks like unless it fits your narrative? The crowd roared, clapping and cheering, some shouting Michelle's name. Joy's face went shrill, fighting to regain control. Oh, give me a break. You want to be the champion of everyday women while living in a mansion and walking red carpets? That's hypocrisy, Michelle, plain and simple. Michelle leaned in closer, her tone quiet but searing. What's hypocritical is pretending you speak for every woman while mocking or dismissing the ones who don't fit your mold. You don't empower women, Joy. You bully them. And you've just tried to bully me on live television. The audience erupted again, some booing Joy, others shouting yes in support of Michelle. Andy looked like he was caught between refereeing a boxing match and enjoying the show of his career. Joy slammed her hands down on the table, her voice cutting through the chaos. You think I'm a bully? You think because I won't give you a pass, that makes me anti-woman? Newsflash, Michelle. Sometimes the truth hurts, and if you can't take it, maybe you're not as tough as you claim. Michelle's response was instant, sharp as a blade. No, Joy, toughness isn't shouting the loudest. Toughness is showing respect while still disagreeing. Toughness is listening. And right now, all you're proving is that when confronted, you lash out instead of engaging. That's not toughness, That's insecurity. The crowd gasped again, louder this time, a ripple of shock, followed by cheers that grew until it was almost deafening. Andy leaned back in his chair, shaking his head with a grin. Wow, wow, I don't even know what to say right now. Joy sat stiff, eyes narrowed, lips pressed into a tight line. She looked ready to fire back, but the audience had turned. For the first time, the energy wasn't with her. It was with Michelle. Michelle, sensing the shift, didn't let up. She leaned into the camera, her voice steadier now, calmer, but every word cutting deep. Women deserve better than being told they have to fit into neat little categories. Housewife, practical woman, career woman. We are all of it and none of it. We are allowed to define ourselves without Joy Behar telling us which version is acceptable. The studio erupted in applause. The noise was so overwhelming that Andy had to raise his voice to be heard over the crowd. Wow, wow, I don't even know what to say right now. Joy sat silent, her face red, her chest rising and falling quickly, gripping the edge of the table as though holding herself in place. Michelle, by contrast, leaned back in her chair, calm again, but the fire still glowing in her eyes. She had taken the fight, turned it, and made the audience her ally. This wasn't just a heated debate anymore. It was a reckoning, and everyone in the room knew it. The applause from Michelle's last words hadn't even fully died down when Joy leaned forward, her face tight with fury. Her voice came out sharp, every syllable laced with frustration. So now I'm the villain? That's the narrative we're painting? I've spent decades calling out hypocrisy, and suddenly Michelle Williams is the authority on who gets to call themselves a strong woman? The studio fell silent again, all eyes locked on the two women. Michelle didn't flinch. She met Joy's stare with steady calm. You're not a villain, Joy. You're human. But the difference is, when you've got a platform like this, every word carries weight. And when you use that weight to belittle women instead of lifting them up, that's harmful. Intent doesn't erase impact. Joy's eyes narrowed. Don't lecture me on impact. I've been shaping conversations about women's rights since you were still playing supporting roles. I've marched, I've rallied, I faced down people who wanted to silence me. Where were you then? The audience gasped audibly. Andy's eyebrows shot up. He leaned forward like a referee ready to stop a prize fight. Whoa, whoa! But Michelle cut in before he could redirect. Her voice was firm, unwavering. Where was I? I was working. I was hustling. I was breaking barriers in Hollywood that people like you said couldn't be broken. Don't tell me I wasn't doing my part just because I didn't do it the same way you did. Activism isn't a uniform, Joy. It's a spectrum. The audience clapped, and Joy's cheeks burned redder. She raised her voice. That's convenient, isn't it? To sit in your mansion, pick and choose when to speak up, and then call it activism. You want the glory of being a voice for women without the responsibility of getting your hands dirty. Michelle's hand slammed on the table again, louder this time, the sound echoing through the studio like a gavel. Enough, she snapped, her eyes blazing. The audience went dead quiet. I've lived the responsibility. I've been underestimated, underpaid, disrespected, and silenced. And I kept going. That's activism. That's resilience. Just because I didn't march beside you doesn't mean I haven't fought my battles. And don't you dare dismiss them. The words landed heavy, and the crowd erupted in cheers, some people standing and shouting her name. Andy looked between the two women, both visibly shaking, one with fury, the other with raw conviction. Joy wasn't backing down. She jabbed a finger in Michelle's direction, her voice shrill now. This isn't about you, Michelle. This is about the millions of women who don't have your fame, your money, your safety net. I fight for them. You fight for your career. Michelle's eyes flashed. She leaned in so close the cameras caught every flicker of emotion in her face. No, Joy. What you do is fight for control. You fight to define what's valid and what's not. And if someone doesn't fit your definition, you tear them down. The audience gasped again, and Joy shot up straighter in her chair, fists clenched on the table. Her voice cracked under the strain. You're twisting my words, Michelle. I'm not tearing anyone down. I'm asking the hard questions nobody else will ask. Michelle shook her head slowly, almost pitying. No, Joy, you're picking fights, and tonight you picked the wrong one. The audience erupted, half cheering, half booing, the studio devolving into chaos. Andy threw up his hands, trying to calm the noise, but even he looked rattled. Joy glared across the table, her face crimson, her breathing ragged. Michelle sat firm, steady, almost eerily calm now, as if the storm had passed through her and left her unshaken. For the first time all night, Joy looked like she had no comeback, and the silence that fell in that moment said everything.
The studio was a storm of energy, and when the commercial break hit, it felt like someone had ripped the air out of the room. Producers scrambled in hushed tones, audience members were leaning over their chairs, whispering furiously, and Andy Cohen sat there with that half smile that screamed, "We just made television history." When the cameras came back, Andy tried to smooth it over. Well, clearly this was a passionate conversation. That's what this show is about. Real talk, no filters. His words were light, but his eyes flicked nervously between Michelle and Joy, both still visibly charged. Michelle leaned back in her chair, calm but resolute. "Look, I don't regret speaking up. Women are tired of being boxed into labels. We're not here to fit someone's outdated checklist of what makes us valuable. We create our worth." The crowd applauded, loud and sustained, giving Michelle a moment of redemption. Joy sat stiff, arms crossed, her jaw tight. She gave a forced smile, but the audience's reaction made clear where the room had landed. Andy jumped in quickly. "Well, I think we can all agree this was fiery, and I have a feeling this conversation isn't ending here." He was right. By the time the show ended, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok were on fire. Clips of Michelle slamming the table, of her fiery stare cutting through Joy's defenses, were already trending. Hashtags like Michelle versus Joy, Not Your Label, and Table Slam climbed rapidly up the charts. Some fans hailed Michelle as a hero. Finally, someone stood up to Joy Behar's condescension. Michelle Williams spoke truth for all of us. Others defended Joy, praising her for holding celebrities accountable. The split only fueled the fire, and the clip was replayed on morning shows the very next day. For Michelle, the moment was transformative. She hadn't just defended herself. She had given a voice to millions of women who had felt boxed in by labels and dismissed for not living up to someone else's definition of strength. She left the set not with anger, but with quiet conviction that her message had landed where it needed to. For Joy, the night was harder. Headlines framed her as the antagonist, the one who had pushed too far, the one who underestimated her guest. And while she shrugged it off on the next morning's episode of The View, there was no mistaking that the clash had left its mark. For Andy Cohen, he had just overseen one of the most explosive moments in Watch What Happens Live history, a segment that would be replayed for years as the night when Michelle Williams slammed her hand on the table and declared her truth. The cameras had caught it all, the clash, the power shift, the silence, and the eruption. And when the dust finally settled, one thing was undeniable. The conversation about what it means to be a woman in today's world had been cracked wide open, and Michelle Williams had been the one to throw down the gauntlet. Andy signed off the episode with a grin. "Well, folks, that's live television. Love it or hate it, you can't look away." And no one did.